I'm Dr. Barb.
And I'm Maggie.
And today on Women and Money, the shit we don't talk about, we are going to talk about the gray divorce with Brenda Bridges of Bridging Wealth Solutions.
We are so glad to have Brenda with us today. She is a financial advisor and a divorce coach.
Yeah, Brenda's going to share some important stories and genuine information about what happens when we find ourselves, if any of us find ourselves in a gray divorce, what we can do now, and how to prepare for our financial future.
It seems like we hear about this more and more every day. A New York Times article shared that 1 in 3 divorces is a gray divorce.
Yeah, and it may not be you that's going through this. Maybe it's your mom or your aunt, or maybe even a coworker that's struggling. This information is so important, so please share it with your BFF or all of the women in your life that you know might be struggling or in a gray divorce situation. So let's get started.
Gloria Steinem once said, "We will never solve the feminization of power until we solve the masculinity of wealth." Barbara Provost and Maggie Nielsen are the team at Purse Strings that will help you navigate the ins and outs of financial independence so that you can be financially fearless. This is Women and Money, the shit we don't talk about.
So let's get started because this podcast is the shit we don't talk about. And today we are talking about it, the gray divorce.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for joining us today. I know you are a divorce coach, but I'd love to start with an intro. I'd love for you to give an introduction about yourself.
Why, thank you. I'm so excited to be talking to you two today. Let's see, introduction. I'm so excited to be talking about the shit we don't talk about because we need to get that out there. Not my bio, but my story is I am divorced, and that has kind of led me down the path of helping other women figure out how to navigate and negotiate that process because it's something we're often not prepared for. I certainly wasn't. I became a financial advisor, almost 10 years ago because my husband lost his job. I was teaching yoga at the time and driving kids around to their different events and whatnot. And looked around and went, this is not going to pay for college and it doesn't have health insurance benefits. So I better do something about that. So I got my licensing as a financial advisor and a registered rep and went to work. About a year and a half later, he was still not employed and, ran out to Starbucks and then came back one day and said he wanted a divorce, which I was not at all prepared for.
Wow.
So went through that process, talk a lot about that. And it was definitely a learning experience. It was also a really horrible process. I couldn't find good information. I just didn't know how to navigate it. And my family suffered, my kids suffered. I made some really poor decisions and came out on the other side, but really looked around and thought, there's got to be a better way. And I have found there is a better way. And that's why I do what I do now. I help women and I work with couples as well. But my focus is on helping people divorce differently, helping people divorce better, helping people, women especially, get the education they need to make sound decisions, not only for going through the process, but for what they want their life to look like later. And what they want their families to look like later, even if they have adult children, it has a lot of bearing.
Yeah.
So I got smart about divorce and I got a bunch of letters behind my name because I took a lot of classes. And the important part is I am, dedicated to educating people and helping them wade through this really confusing and often unforeseen part of life. That is becoming a bigger and bigger part of life for women as we age.
Yeah. Wow, that's a powerful story. Unfortunately, it's one that we've heard over and over again. A lot of women and men have come to the financial industry based on their own experiences and finding that they haven't really had the resources they needed when they were navigating these types of life changes. So thank you for sharing your story with us. And thank you for investing all your time and energy into really preparing yourself to help other women wade and navigate the divorce process. So let's talk about what actually is a gray divorce and what's your experiences with some of the women that you've worked with?
Sure. Well, the technical description of a gray divorce is anyone over 50, which might not be that gray, but that's what's considered
50 is
gray
the new
divorce.
30.
50 is the new 30. Damn it.
Yep.
But no, anything over 50. And it's really not as much an age, I don't think, as it is a life stage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more people who perhaps have been out of the workforce and there's been a primary breadwinner. So one person is the CFO of the household and the
Mm-hmm.
primary wage earner. And the other person tends to be, in that generation anyway, the COO. So they've done all the operations of the household and they've taken care of children if there are children and the social life and making sure things run smoothly, being a face in the community, which is often forgotten, volunteering. So when that partnership dissolves and one of the people is used to going to work every day and earning income, their life doesn't change that much when you really think about it.
That's true.
Someone might not have dinner for them when they get home at night,
Mm-hmm.
but overall doesn't have the, what I see anyway, great impact that it does on someone whose role has been to keep a household running, who suddenly finds themselves without that same household
Right.
and without the means, perhaps, and the education to figure out how they manage their new life and what to do next. And then you layer on, and this is what I see. So I guess backing up a little bit, what I see is in gray divorce, it tends to be women who are not the primary breadwinner. They might not be earning any income at all. They need to go back into the workforce because more and more that, thought of alimony and lifetime support is something almost all states are going away from, and it's becoming more remediation just to get someone on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
So women find themselves going through divorce, which is very, very emotional, no matter which side you're on, whether the person who instigated it or whether you were surprised by it.
Right.
There's still a lot to navigate. And then if you haven't taken care of the finances, you have a huge learning curve to take care of your own finances. You have a much shorter runway to basically take your retirement in hand and make changes that can have some impact over time because, you're not 20 or 30 years with 30 to 40 years to retirement.
Right.
You might be 50, 55, 60. You might have 10 years to get yourself in position that you thought was set.
Yeah.
And you really have to get up to speed quickly, get yourself educated, make smart decisions, because especially at this point, if you make a mistake, it's harder to recover from. I cannot tell you the number of times I've talked to women in their 60s and 70s who have said, I wish I knew you when I went through my divorce.
Yeah.
I wish I had someone like you when I went through your divorce. And that's not specific to me. That is saying they needed someone to hold their hand financially.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
With compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And not just, pat them on their pretty little head and say it's going to be fine, but really be forthright and open about what their options are and what the ramifications of different choices are and how to weigh the decisions that they're now going to have to make and how it's going to impact their future.
Right. It's a lot. And it's almost like
It's
a
a
deer in the
lot.
headlights, like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So what are some next steps that you give to women? They find themselves, all of a sudden in a divorce proceeding. They were uncertain about the money in their household. They may have had some inklings, but maybe from the operational, like you said, the operational standpoint, not from the long-term investing standpoint. What's your advice to give women who suddenly find themselves in that situation?
So not from an operational, but from a self-care, self-preservation standpoint, really breathe, take your time.
Mm-hmm.
You might feel like a deer in the headlights, and it certainly is a pressure-packed situation. But if you're making these life-changing decisions from a point of fear or scarcity, you're not doing yourself or anyone in your household, any favors.
Right.
So really, and this is so hard because usually these women have been taking care of families and others for so long. And their first inclination is, I'm going to keep the house. I'm going to do everything for the kids. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
get through this. When really it is take a step back and breathe and center, because you're going to need a lot of strength and support to get through this in a way that is as productive and positive as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Given that divorce usually sucks, it just sucks to greater or lesser degrees.
Yeah.
I
True.
mean, I've truly only met one person ever who said my divorce was awesome. There's one. So sorry, I digress. So the first thing I really would say before anything is like, get centered, get support, know you're going to need it. And especially if you're one of those, I can bring home the bacon fried up in the pan, I can take care of everything. I got this. Dig deep and be able to say, you don't got this. And you
Mm-hmm.
need people around you for emotional support. And you need professionals around you who can help guide you through this process.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you've been divorced before, it was different. It's different every single time. You're in a different situation,
Mm-hmm.
different finances, shorter runway,
Mm-hmm.
regardless, for your financial well-being. Then the next thing I would say, after you kind of come to terms with, this might be hard and you really need to approach it authentically.
Yeah.
Kind of a dual next step. One is to try to get as clear as you can on your roles and your goals. Try to get as clear as you can on your goals. Not just getting to the divorce as the finish line, because it's not, it's the starting line of the rest of your life.
Mm.
Figure out what you want that to look like, because that should be the guiding light. That should be your true north for the decisions that you're making as you're going through this process. Then arm yourself with information. So, and be very careful about where you get the information.
Mm-hmm.
An entity like Purse Strings, that is a wonderful place to get information. It's vetted. There are professionals who are really dedicated to doing the thing that's best for the women we serve, the women that
Mm-hmm.
Purse Strings serves. Do not get your information from a Facebook group with a bunch of angry divorcees.
Yeah.
It's not likely to be as credible as you need, and there's a place for that. If you need to vent, by all means vent, but don't use that as your source of information that you will be making these life-changing decisions
Yeah.
on.
Well, that's an excellent point, because I've seen there's a lot out there. There's a lot of noise out there on the internet, and I love what you're saying around, take a step back, get yourself kind of in a space where you can make good logical decision, and then gather the right resources around you and keep them close to you, because a lot of people will be giving you a lot of information. I've seen a lot of angry people go through divorce, and that costs a lot of money. We have a lot of anger involved and a win versus lose mentality. So I love what you're saying here. So go on.
Well, just to your point about it can cost a lot of money. Many people don't realize you can have a budget for your divorce.
Bingo.
Now, frequently people don't manage their divorce in that way. It'll just be turned over to professionals, frequently the court system.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's this runaway train. You get a bill at the end of every month, and it's like, holy cow, there goes, one college education gone, cha-ching,
Right.
it just keeps flowing outward. It doesn't have to be that way. You, as the person hiring the professionals, are in complete control over what those professionals do. So you can say, I don't want to spend more than fill in the blank a month. I don't want to spend more than this total on my divorce. I want to make sure that we're managing the process. And that's also key. And this is something that's changed, I feel, dramatically in the last 20 years. There are different professionals for different roles in divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer just an attorney.
Right.
Now, attorney, they're highly educated. They are very skilled. They know the laws. Divorce is a legal proceeding. It's really important. But they are not your therapist. They are not your coach. They are not your financial advisor.
Right.
They are probably the most highly compensated of professionals you might want to have on your team as you go through this. But it always serves people to keep the professionals doing the job that they are trained to do. Mm-hmm. So an attorney should be helping you navigate the legal waters of divorce. There are financial advisors. Shameless plug. Yes, I am one of them, but there are many of us. So I'm a certified divorce financial analyst.
Mm-hmm.
That means I've been trained in the finance of divorce and the ramifications down the road of the decisions people are making now. And it can take all sorts of different shapes, but ultimately, being a financial advisor specializing in divorce is different than being a financial advisor specializing in college planning or retirement.
Right.
Because there's an end game, that's when you settle and your divorce is finalized, whereby you can't walk that back. Those decisions are made. So you want to make sure as you're making the decisions, you know the ramifications of them, and you don't want to be surprised down the road because, well, you got the house, but oh my goodness, you have capital gains tax because it wasn't structured properly, or
Right.
you thought you were going to get half of a pension, but the pension was valued incorrectly. So, or it was the math behind it that was supplied to the attorneys, or perhaps the attorneys did the math on the pension. It was done incorrectly. Well, once you're settled, you have so little recourse on fixing those things. You
Yes.
really want to know going in, what are the ramifications? Divorce coach is another professional. They're being utilized more and more. When you think about the process of divorce, and it can be lengthy and complicated, especially if someone is using the court system, a lot of those things don't need to be managed by an attorney. They
Mm-hmm.
could be managed by someone who is knowledgeable about the process or the business of divorce and can help walk people through maybe scheduling when the meetings are, and if
Mm-hmm.
they cost half what the attorney does, you've significantly impacted your budget for divorce.
Yeah.
Not only that, they can be, and sorry, I'm obviously passionate about
Yeah.
this because I could talk
No,
for
you're
forever.
a wealth of information.
I could talk forever, but a divorce coach could be a really good thinking partner. So to sit with your attorney and weigh through the ins and outs of, whether you keep the house or not from a financial point of view, but from an emotional point of view, from a mental point of view, from a familial point of view, do you need to walk through that with an attorney? Most attorneys I know who practice family law, that's not really what they want to be spending their time doing. But a divorce coach or a mental health professional trained in divorce, that is exactly what they should be doing. And they can help someone navigate decisions and really walk down the path of, well, what if I do this versus what if I do this? An attorney is there to say, yes, you have legal standing to do this. That is a sound decision, or no, and here are the ramifications. And a financial advisor, a CDFA, might be saying, yes, I understand what your goal is. But for example, you've always had the 401k in your name, but because your ex was self-employed, they have all their money in the business. And then they did a Roth IRA because for many years they were not the primary breadwinner. Let's say, look, let's just say there's $100,000 in each. You have $100,000 in a Roth IRA and you have $100,000 in a 401k. Does it matter? Do I just say that's my 401k? I want to keep it? Well, that $100,000 in that 401k is going to be taxed ultimately. So let's say you're in a 30% tax bracket. It's really only $70,000.
Right, right.
The $100,000 in the Roth IRA, that's $100,000. So your financial advisor who's trained in looking at things from that long-term tax ramification perspective can help you make those decisions. Other things they might do, which other professionals might not necessarily think of, is just look at managing the cost of things. I once worked with a client. She and her going to be ex-husband had many, they had 20 different investment accounts. People aggregate them over time, different jobs and whatnot. In the settlement, their attorney just split them all down the middle.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then we looked at that and went, okay, but 10 of these require a quadro. So quadro is a qualified domestic relations order. That's how the courts allow a retirement plan that's an ERISA plan, like a 401k. That's how they allow those to be divided. But it costs money and it takes sometimes a significant amount of time. So by splitting all of those accounts, if you have 10 that require a quadro at say $700 per, there's $7,000 out the window.
Yeah.
We looked at it and we could equalize. So they ended up with the same bottom line, but they only needed to do one quadro. So right there, they saved $6,300.
Yeah.
So by using the right professional, long-winded way of saying, use the right professional in the right space to support you in your decision, and you're likely to have a more streamlined, efficient, economical process and a better outcome.
Awesome. A lot of great information right there. A lot of great information in that process. And I think, through this whole conversation, you covered that there are a lot of professionals. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of finance, a lot of grounding yourself, but needing others as well. So, someone asks you to get divorced or you're asking somebody else, it's like you said, it's a big feat either way. Especially if you haven't had your money or you haven't had your hands on the finances in a house. And so what do you recommend to these women who are thinking about divorce, would really like that option, have never had their hands on the money in the house, don't really know what it's going to turn out like? Do I push through and kind of live this life that's not my favorite for the rest because I know then I can at least retire and have a roof over my head? Or, how do I know if I take this other decision, to get divorced and hopefully land on my feet?
I really think, and I've worked with women who have ended up on both sides of that fence. You have to make your own decision, but make this decision from a knowledgeable place. I've worked with some women where up to a year before they talk to their husband about wanting a divorce, they went through the exercise of learning what their finances were, understanding, the different terms and definitions. They didn't go in with this is the settlement I want. It wasn't that down the road, but they did have an understanding of the pros and cons of what they would be gaining or giving up, not just from a financial point of view, but from an emotional point of view, a mental health point of view. If anyone is a fan of Glennon Doyle, we have one life, right? Mm-hmm. This is our one and only chance at this go round. So this is our one and only chance. We're the only ones who can decide how we want to live that. And yes, it can be scary. And there are certainly people. I got an email this week from a couple who had started down the path and they decided they're not going to divorce. That is their choice. They own it. And I celebrate that. And if someone decides that this is not how they want to live their life and they don't feel good in that space, scary as it can be, you can find the support to help you through that fear. And the only way I think to truly face it is armed with information and facts and support. And there are circles out there. Again, purse strings being one. There are a lot of different community resources. There are professionals who, through paid professionals or workshops or support groups or houses of worship, there are a lot of places to go get support, especially as divorce becomes more prevalent for people who are older. So I would say seek it out and find, this sounds so yogi. I am actually a yoga instructor. Sounds so yogi. But, find your truth.
Yes.
What do you want to live with and how do you want to live? And if you make the decision that this marriage is no longer for you, then you can seek out people who are going to support you in finding what's next.
Right.
And making good decisions.
Yeah. And so let's just kind of recap what I've heard you say. First of all, you have to make your own decision for yourselves and how you want to live your life. That's it. No one else can make that decision for you.
Can I jump in there?
Sure.
Just on that, one really key thing, and one we work through a lot in coaching, is you are making your decision for yourself, not your children, not your grandchildren, not your parents, not your community, not your church, not your school, not your dog, not your cat, you are making the decision for yourself. And as you process it, really try to get true to that. Because all those other people, they have their own lives. You're not living theirs.
Exactly. And it's okay to put yourself first.
Yep.
That's, one of our mantras here at Purse Strings is you come first, because so often women put aside everything that they want and desire to accommodate others in their lives. And when it comes to your finances, it's core, especially if you're in a divorce situation. It's core to your survival and to how you're going to live your life and your life down the road. So true. Yes. Let's make sure every woman out there going through a divorce, navigating one, sometimes it's not always our choice, but if that's where you're at, you really need to come to your own sense of self and how you're going to manage and create your new life. And if you're making this decision for yourself, you need to understand why and that it's for yourself, not for, like you said, everybody else in your sphere. I also love, Brenda, how you said, get the right people surrounding you. We say at Purse Strings, it's not just an attorney. It's not just one person at the table. It's a group of people, like you've mentioned. It could be your coach. It can be your therapist. It can be a realtor. That whole keep the house thing, that's not always the best idea. So you need to explore that as well. Your financial professional. All of those people come together because they have various areas of expertise that they can help you with. So that's really important too. And also the fact that this takes time, right, Brenda? I mean, what do you think the average time span of actually going through divorce can take?
So I would say it's 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. There are some, but there tend to not be the gray divorce area. I mean, if someone is in their 20s or 30s and they don't have a lot of assets and they don't have a house and they don't have kids, it can certainly be much, much
Sure.
faster.
Right.
But for the area that we're talking about, where people have a higher net worth and they have a long-standing relationship, to unravel that and separate those lives can take some time. And then there is always one person in the process who is many, many, many steps ahead of the other partner. The typical time that someone is thinking about getting divorced before they take action is 2 years.
Wow.
So they might have been, the person asking for the divorce might have been really playing through many different scenarios and working through it over a 2-year span. That other partner has a lot of catching up to do and a lot of figuring out to do that they need to work through.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, it's a big, big transition in anyone's life, that's for sure. Especially with the gray divorce, like you say, there's a lot of unraveling in terms of children, grandchildren, families that you've really knitted together. Yeah. So interesting. I will say, though, if you are navigating a gray divorce and find yourself suddenly single, the world is still your oyster. There is so much out there that women can do and take advantage of, and there's a whole nother life to live. So it's not all gloom and doom. I think for some, even though it may not be your choosing, or it may, there's a whole nother life out there that you can live and step into.
Oh, I absolutely agree. One of the exercises that I work through with my clients is as they're going through the divorce process, think of those things, and it might just be one thing that you set aside, that you didn't do, that you didn't pursue. Maybe you used to love to paint and you put that away because your ex didn't like the mess. Maybe you used to like to garden, but you didn't have time, it wasn't important. Whatever the thing or things were, try to start bringing those back into your life. And there can be so much joy there. And then there can also be a lot of new connections, because one of the sad but always true parts of divorce is, in addition to losing the marriage, which is just the couple, a lot of relationships go by the wayside. A lot of community connections can go by the wayside. A lifestyle, your lifestyle by definition changes dramatically. So the more you can focus on finding those things that bring you joy and incorporating them in a really purposeful, meaningful way, the more likely you're to stay centered, to keep balance, and to be moving forward. If the example was painting, that was my own example. It had gone from my life. Well, I brought it back in, and then I took some painting classes, and then I met other people who I never would have met if I didn't pick it back up. That was just me. Maybe someone else's, I don't know, what's yours? What's a thing that you can think of that like, oh, I used to love that and I set it aside.
Yeah. You know what? You're going to laugh. Mine is yoga, Brenda.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, really wanting to get more into yoga and spending more time learning about it. So, yeah, I think there's so much joy that you can find in a whole new life. It's a new beginning, a new start. So even though you navigate kind of one of the most difficult times in your life, you can come out the other end with some real clarity around how you want to spend the rest of your life, which I think is just a beautiful way to look at it. You know, with endings also become new beginnings. So
Right.
yeah, so this has been really, really wonderful to talk about divorce because so many people, you know, there's so much vulnerability around divorce. When you go through it, people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about how they're feeling or how they feel they've been treated or mistreated. But, you know, we
And
need to
it's
start talking
hard.
about this. We need to start
We
sharing
do.
this with everybody because
What you
this
say?
is life.
It's the
Yeah.
shit that we don't talk about. We're here
Yeah,
to
we're
talk about the
talking
shit we
about
don't
it.
talk about.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess just a side story. I was in a training once with a very, very well-known financial advisor and a group of us, and we were role playing. And I told him about the work I did and that I would be role playing a divorce scenario. So we went up and did it. And he, at the end of our little role play, felt compelled to tell the entire group, I'm not getting divorced. This doesn't impact me. Don't even think I'm getting divorced. Like he was very
Defensive.
defensive about even saying the divorce word. Well, we were doing role plays and
Yeah.
everyone, it was kind of shocking to me, but it is one of those things that people really, really, really either don't want to talk about or just don't know how to approach it.
Hmm.
And to that, I would say, and anyone who's been divorced, I think, has experienced that. But if you are not the one getting divorced, you are a friend or family member or neighbor or someone in the life of someone who is getting divorced, I would support you in just being with that person. You
Hmm.
don't have to solve their problems. You don't have to understand what they're going through. You don't have to have been there because we've all been in different places. But to just say, hey, I'm holding you in my heart, or I'm thinking about you, or I'd love to bring you dinner or a loaf of banana bread.
Yeah.
Um, it can
Yeah.
really, those little tiny things that are so normal can
Hmm.
really help people going through divorce because much of their normal has been disrupted.
Yeah.
And it is just, it's hard for people to talk about. And people who aren't going through it, you can't catch it, but you can help people who are,
Yeah.
not by calling it out, but just by being there.
Yeah.
And I
Just,
think that's really powerful.
yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end this wonderful discussion on. I just want to ask you, Brenda, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you?
I have two websites. One is just brendabridges.com and the other is bridgingdivorcesolutions.com. And I am happy to talk to anyone who needs my help. They can schedule a complimentary discovery call. And if I'm not the person for them, frequently I can connect them to other people they might want to talk to or be able to learn more from, get support from. So that is certainly a way to I guess, share.
Great.
Awesome. So thank you again, Brenda, for coming on today. We really appreciate it. And Brenda's also one of our approved Purse Strings approved professionals. So she's part of our Purse Strings network of approved professionals who really know how to work with the female market, understand what they need, and really help them in these transactions and transitions in life. So we appreciate everyone tuning in today, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Bye.
Thank you, Brenda.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.